Some students are trying to get Camille Paglia fired from her job at the University of Arts in Pennsylvania. They're doing so because they say some of her comments are transphobic and therefore dangerous, and that she doesn't respect the experiences of sexual assault survivors and therefore should not be allowed on campus. There's an article in The Atlantic about this, and there are a few things that I find really interesting about this article. I'll link it below. Number one is Camille has had controversy before on campus when she published her first book, Sexual Personae, which I believe she did under the direction of Harold Bloom at Yale University. If you don't know Harold Bloom, that man has read more books in his lifetime than probably any other human being ever has read in their lifetime. And I'm serious about that. He's a prolific reader and sort of the arbiter of what is excellence in English literature. At any rate, Camille wrote Sexual Personae, and some teachers and professors at the time at her university wanted the book banned from campus. One professor said that it was like Mein Kampf. What disturbs me most about this is our professors are supposed to be the intelligent people in our society, and it goes to show you that maybe they do have high IQs, but an IQ of the upper stratosphere, or at least the upper echelons, does not necessarily equate to any sort of wisdom or comprehension of comparison between two texts. I mean, to compare something like Sexual Personae to Mein Kampf is idiotic, and I would bet you anything the professor read neither of those books. Would almost bet anything. So what you have is professors who compare relatively benign, interesting but benign works like Sexual Personae to evil racialist texts like Mein Kampf. It's a totally haphazard comparison. It's relativistic. I mean, it's pure relativism. It compares something benign to something evil. And what is worse, it's based on, it's totally based on a ignorance of both books. Guaranteed they had not read any of the books. They've read headlines about the books. Another point I'll make is sometimes they read the books, very, very rarely do they actually read them, but when they do, I always have this saying that comes to my mind. You know, you've heard you can't judge a book by its cover. And when you hear a professor talk about a certain book, you clearly, some people can't judge a book by the book, which is a problem as well. The second thing I noticed in this article, which was fascinating, was the students at the time at this university. I can't remember what university it was. I don't think it was University of Arts in Philadelphia. But anyways, wherever they wanted to ban the book, the students, the freshmen, some of the freshmen read the book and said, I don't understand, one, why they would ban it, and two, it was something I could easily understand. Why would the professors tell me what I could and could not understand in the book? I read it, I understood it, I agreed with some of the ideas I did not. But when you try to ban a book, people necessarily want to read it more. So in the early 90s or 80s, whenever this was, the students actually saved the professor. The students believed in free speech, and now it seems as if the professors and students, well, the students of the early 90s taught by the professors in the early 90s have, well, it looks like the professors have successfully brainwashed an entire generation because the new professors are just so eager to prevent the next Hitler that they're going to, and be the people who prevent the next Hitler, to be those knights in shining armor, that they're going to create Hitlers out of nothing. I mean, if you don't have dragons, you have to create the dragons. Osama bin Laden, I'll never forget this. One of the reasons, or the reason he wished to fight the United States was because when the U.S. tried to stop Saddam Hussein from taking over Kuwait, they put troops in Saudi Arabia, and in Osama bin Laden's mind, this was the establishment of a religion in Saudi Arabia. Muhammad on his deathbed had said there should not be two religions on the peninsula. And bin Laden, in his mind, exaggerated what was happening, so he'd have a pretext to go to war with a great foe, the United States. The professor, the academics do the same sort of thing. They find things that are really, again, benign, and then create dragons out of them. You see this constantly. There's some innocuous, mostly innocuous speaker who has, Charles Murray or Roger Scruton recently, deep thinkers. I'm not saying that, but, are they dangerous? Of course not. But if you have a weird enough perception, you can see them as dangerous. The final point I want to ask or make, and it's a question, is if Hitler was deplatformed, would that have prevented Nazism? It's an interesting question. The problem is you're not really dealing with too many Hitlers. There's not many. I can't think of anybody in the last, gosh, I don't know how long who's written anything that's like Mein Kampf, except perhaps some of the professors. So there could be an aspect of projection going on here that the racialists, the people who have these, you could easily see the far left becoming murderous and genocidal, could you not? Same as with the far right, but the far left are in the positions of power. So they're very concerned about power. They have the power. They're in academia, Hollywood. They occupy many positions in government. So those are the things you have to, a lot of times when you see the far left act crazy, it's probably a lot of projection. And I do a lot of videos on the far right too, but the far left, what they're doing to people like Camille Paglia, it's disgusting, it's sickening, and it's disheartening. Someone so benign and interesting being, castigated as demonic. And again, I've talked about this in a lot of my videos, but I'm doing a book on the political dark arts and how the superstitious thinking of medieval times, even back in ancient Greece, how those thought forms still exist today. And this silencing of Camille, or trying to, is a lot like the ripping out of tongues, which was a medieval torture practice and part of the dark arts. So you can think of the Matrix, when Neo is captured by Agent Smith, or taken in right at the beginning of the Matrix, and he says, "What good is your mouth what good is speaking if you have no mouth?" And his mouth closes shut. That's a form of the dark arts. It's putting curses and hexes on people to silence them. Anyways, I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but anyways, hopefully Camille does not lose her job and we all fight back against this.